So here we go. All right, Justin, and when you're ready, go ahead and take it away.
Can you guys hear me and see everything?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So before I begin, I wanted to let you guys know that I recently adopted a little puppy and am babysitting my mom's dog. So if you hear any barks or squeaks or whimpers, that's what that is. And if they start barking for too long, I'll just pause my microphone for a moment till they settle down. Just like that one. So I'm Justin Clutterbuck. I've been with Enliven Health for about 7 years. No, 6 years. It'll be 6 years it was 6 years last September. I am a reconciliation analyst for Enliven Health. And I'm also the communications lead for the Proud Collective. So when I was about 5 years old, I was diagnosed with ADD. My mom, however, is a nurse, and she knew that something didn't quite fit the ADD diagnosis about me. So she continued to take me to therapists and psychologists, and eventually she found one that took her seriously. And after a few sessions with him, he diagnosed me with autism at the age of 9. Let's see how there we go. So autism spectrum disorder is a developmental condition caused by differences in the brain. The term Asperger's syndrome is a harmful and outdated way of separating the different types of presentations of autism. More nowadays, we use terms like high care and low care to differentiate between people who are what was once called high functioning and low functioning. Now, people with ASD often have problems with social communication, interaction, and restricted or repetitive behaviors and interests. People with ASD also may have different ways of learning, moving, and paying attention. So these are some keywords that I put together for you guys about autism, and I'm going to explain those as we go. But if you have any questions about it, I'll leave that for the end of this segment. So neurodivergent, this is what people with autism and ADHD call themselves. It's becoming a more widely recognized and accepted term, even by professionals. In the past, professionals used terms like slow or disabled, or unfortunately, the word retarded. These terms are not only incorrect, but they're very harmful. Autism is not really a disability, though it is classified by most professionals. I prefer to think of it, as cheesy as it may sound, a different ability. We just do things a little differently than what my next topic is about. So neurotypicals are what autists refer to people without ADHD or autism. I want to specify that I include ADHD in these definitions because the two diagnoses often overlap and sometimes can be misdiagnosed as one when it's actually the other. Medications for ADHD can also help people with autism, and as it turns out, I have both. So this next word, prosody, is most people don't know what it is, but it's something that affects both neurotypicals and neurotypicals. In their speech, neurotypicals vary their pitch, their loudness, tempo, and rhythm when they speak to convey different meanings. These changes are what is called prosody. Autistic people, even with low support needs, like myself, may not truly recognize patterns to grasp what's being said. So despite how you say one thing and you say it with a certain intonation alluding to something, a person with autism may not pick up on that. So the next term is comorbidity. As mentioned previously, there are other conditions that come with autism, ADHD being one, but a lot of people with autism also struggle with depression, anxiety, and other mental illnesses. There are some pretty cool ones that actually come with autism, though. I happen to have one called synesthesia, and this means that, to me, Emotions, words, and sounds allow me to feel colors. For example, my mom and I, when I was a teenager, were eating, I think it was a red velvet cake from some store we didn't usually go to. And she asked me how it tasted, and I responded with beige. Um, that's just, a little quirk about me. But these are called grapheme synesthesia and chromesthesia. The next term I'm going to talk about is called scripting. So often autistic teens and adults rely on scripting, which means we rehearse what we need to say in different situations beforehand and continue to use that throughout our lives. For example, when I get a call in my department, I answer the exact same way every time. Thank you for calling Enliven Health. What can I do to help today? That way, it gives me a sense of control when I start speaking, and it boosts my confidence to move on to the things that I'm not fully aware of what are going to happen next. Sensory processing disorder is a condition that affects how our brain processes sensory information. So things like hearing, seeing, smell, touch, and taste. Uh, these are all the different sensory inputs. And SPD can affect all of your senses or just one. For autistic people, these stimuli can often be quickly overwhelming for us. Things like flashing lights, repetitive or loud noises, even the fabric of our t-shirts. For instance, when I was a child, I would rip the tags out of all of the back of my t-shirts because they hurt my skin, and it made holes, and it drove my mother insane. So stimming, this is a repetitive performance of certain physical moments or vocalizations. The repetitive vocalizations are called echolalia. These are a form of behavior by people with autism and or other neurodevelopmental conditions, and it's sometimes referred to as self-stimulation. These behaviors are believed to serve a variety of functions, such as calming oneself and the expression of our feelings. In my case, I tend to rock back and forth when I'm feeling excited, or if I'm laying down, I like moving my feet from side to side. A visual schedule is really helpful for autists of all ages. Routines are important to us, and being able to see those in writing and in some case with fun and eye-catching accessories might help us not only to remember when to do something, but what to do and how to do it. And the last term I'm going to go over is masking. This is a more contemporary phrase. It's grown in popularity with the autistic community, and now professionals are starting to use it as well. Masking is when autists are putting on a metaphorical mask to appear quote unquote normal or neurotypical. That is to say, um, we want to appear like the rest of the world, but masking is often a very taxing and frustrating thing to do. It can take a lot of emotional and physical energy out of us. Now, there are some autists who say that as you get older and mask more often, it gets easier. But my personal stance is that autistic people should not have to mask at all. So I wanted to talk a bit about the Autism Self-Advocacy Network, or ASAN. A few facts about ASAN are that they exist to drive policy and legal advocacy. They make educational resources for both neurodivergents and neurotypicals. They create self-advocacy tools, so for advocacy of all type, actually, to help others further policy and legal advocacy. And then they also do leadership training for autistic self-advocates, so they can have other splinter groups sort of break off from ASAN and can be led by autistic individuals. Now, ASAN is a group for autistic people by autistic people, and it's regarded by the autistic community to be the best representation of us. Its goal is to help both neurodivergence and neurotypical parents, partners, family, and caregivers. However, the most commonly known autistic group is what's called Autism Speaks. In my community, it is widely recognized that Autism Speaks does not speak for us. As an example of what I'm talking about, of its 28 board members, only one member is autistic. Most of the boards are actually CEOs of companies who use their position to advertise products to parents and caregivers. And as it says below, the missing puzzle piece is that was popularized by Autism Speaks. We don't really vibe with that. We're not missing anything, and instead we add to the world. So these days, autism is most often diagnosed as a child, but there are adults who weren't diagnosed as a kid and want to know what's going on with them. So presently, it presents at 4% in boys and is mostly diagnosed in males. Girls present at 1%. Females have lower rates of diagnoses than this, but it's mostly attributed to sexist underdiagnosis. And as in terms of race, Asian or Pacific Islander is at its highest with 3.3%, while white is the lowest at 2.4%. However, again, this may be due to underdiagnosis. A good friend of mine recently got her diagnosis, and she told me that after everything was filed away and papers were signed and things like that, her psychiatrist asked her, you're in your 30s. Why does this matter to you now? And she said, because I'd rather know that I'm a zebra than believe I'm just a horse who doesn't fit in with the herd. And that's a great way to explain what being what autistic feels like is we we are aware that we don't fit in, but we don't always understand why. Um, so as I mentioned a moment ago, females have a lower rate of diagnosis. Uh, Sadly, in the not so distant past, and even still today, signs of autism in girls and women are often misconstrued as what a woman should be. And I say that in quotes. Quiet, polite, working on tasks silently and efficiently. These things being attributed to what women should be often lead to a large underdiagnosis in autistic females. Now, over the years, the diagnostic standards have changed for autism, and there are likely many, many adults walking around who have autism and are either unaware or undiagnosed. Combining this with the stigma around mental health and psychology, it's believed that the percentages that you see reflected here are actually much higher. So these are a list of some symptoms in adults. Finding it hard to understand what others are thinking or feeling. This is one that I myself struggle with. I love talking to people. Despite the stereotype of being autistic and being social, I am very much a social person. And when I talk a lot, as you are experiencing right now. I do, however, have a very hard time recognizing when people are trying to end a conversation with me so that they can go do other things, or when people need a friendly ear for companionship after a hard day. I don't tend to pick up on those. Another symptom is having a very keen interest in certain subjects or activities. Now, autists often refer to this as a specialty or a hyperfixation. Um, you may have heard of the video game Skyrim. It's the fifth in a series of video games, and my hyperfixation is that series of video games. There is nothing I can't tell you about those games, uh, down from the most minute detail to the most obvious things. But you may have heard of other autists being interested in trains, vacuums, motors. I once saw a very cute video online of a young autistic boy who was obsessed with this commercial for a local vacuum store. And for his birthday, the owner of the vacuum store who was in the commercial made an appearance at his birthday, and brought him a few vacuums for the boy to take apart and reassemble. So the last one, sounding rude or uninterested without meaning to, this is another one that I struggle with. Despite how I sound right now, there are days that I am physically incapable of masking. And on those days, I can sound rude or uncaring when someone is telling me something important. So if you're speaking with a person you know is autistic and they sound completely disinterested, don't take that personally. It's just how we talk sometimes. So these are some recommendations that I have for not just Omnicell, but people and companies in general. Build an understanding of what autism is in your organization. Communicate clearly and preferably written down for your employees. I know that if I have a very detailed list of what needs to be done for something, it makes it 100 times easier for me. Create personal spaces and safe rooms. This is something that I didn't go into earlier, but autistic people can have what are called meltdowns. This is when something or some things overstimulate us to the point of a little unmasking. Things get very difficult for us, and we kind of have a little bit of a freak out. Having a safe space to do that in is key for autistic people to calm down very quickly because they know where they are. They're okay. Give advance notices about routine changes. If you know that something's coming up, give your employees a little heads up. The further in advance, the better. And if you have employees that are autistic and you're aware of that, maybe talk to them a little bit more about it so they understand what they're going to be doing. Change is not easy for autistic people, and easing them into that change is going to be very helpful. Offering training for supervisors and managers. Again, this would be a great way to involve ASAN. A lot of people don't know how to care for autistic children, let alone employees. Uh, with supervisors, managers, and leads being aware of that, it's going to make an already promising autistic employee even more promising. Provide reasonable accommodation. Um, Most autistic people don't need a lot, but what we do need sometimes are little changes. Things like I mentioned earlier, lighting. I know my last boss, I was having trouble with the overhead fluorescent lights. She said, build a little shelter over your desk, board, put it over my desk, and it was much darker, and I got work done much more efficiently. Include regular autism education and trainings. Having your employees be aware of autism and how that presents in the workplace is going to be just as beneficial as your leads and managers knowing how to do things. Provide reassurance in stressful situations. Like I mentioned earlier, change is very difficult for us and we can get overwhelmed very easily. Um, Truly letting that employee know that you believe in them wholeheartedly is going to be a great source of uh, building confidence for them that they can handle things. Lean into your employees' strengths and interests. I myself am a meticulous planner. Recently, a new project came up in my department that's going to include a lot of that. My boss came to me directly and said, "Hey, you were the first person I thought of this because I know you like keeping detailed lists and notebooks and spreadsheets about just about everything." And my last recommendation is to take autistic employees seriously. If they come to you with an issue that means that they're trying to do their best and they need a little extra help. I've had bosses in the past and even coworkers and family members who, when they see me struggling, they just take it as a sign of, oh, well, he's autistic, so of course he can't handle it. That could not be farther from the truth. We can handle things. We just need a little guidance on how to do it. So this is my conclusion. As it says here, autistic employees are friends are valuable, wonderful, and colorful people, no matter how their autism presents itself. Make friends with them, hire them, and enjoy the relationships that they provide you. Now, if you suspect you or someone you know has autism, the link at the bottom of the screen provides a link to the autism quotient screening that's given by psychiatrists. I do need to clarify, though, this is not a diagnosis. This would be used for something to start the conversation with your doctor if you're interested in moving forward with a diagnosis. And if you're interested in keeping any of this information, I'd be happy to email you the PowerPoint that I've put together. But that's really all that I have to talk about today. I'm going to open up the floor for questions now, but I am so, so grateful to have had this opportunity today. Um, and that's really all I have to say.
Thank you, Justin. I will definitely hold it here and give space for people to ask questions. I know I have a question or two, but I wanted to go ahead and just see what questions the group might have. This is a very great information for all of us, Justin. Definitely Jody, myself, Stephanie, the leadership group within Breathe, very much appreciate you putting this together for our group. And so, yeah, I'll hold and pause right there and just see what questions do you all have right now that you would like to ask Justin.
I would like to say, Justin, thank you. You have, from the very moment that I met you, you have really